G'day, Glenn Morris here from the Smart Energy Lab, and today I'd like to welcome Karl Jensen and Luke Beattie from iStore. G'day.
Hey, Glenn, mate.
Thanks for having us.
It's great. Hey, this is episode 153 of Toolbox Tech Talk.
Unreal.
Yeah, I'm rebooting it, so it's an honour to have you on.
Well, and also an esteemed man who won an award from YouTube.
Oh, what was that?
It's over on the wall over there, Glenn. That was the first thing. As soon as we got here, you marched us over and made us prostrate before the YouTube award.
Yeah, it's just a bit of a milestone. I just can't believe it's gone so fast. I mean, I was at 10,000 at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100,000. I don't know. People seem to like this stuff.
Yep. Well, you brought lots of skills. You're a photographer in a previous life, yeah?
I've had a few previous lives, but we'll keep that secret. So just to introduce you both, you're from a company called iStore, which is pretty obvious. What does iStore do?
iStore does home electrification products, so heat pump, hot water, hybrid solar inverters, batteries, EV chargers, anything else?
In the future, there may be pool heat pumps as well. But the
Pool
idea,
heat pumps,
yeah.
Wow.
So it's all about electrification.
So more or less all the things that cost you money to run, plus the things that could save you money.
Exactly. So helping people reduce their energy usage and also electrify everything, get them off gas, so we get the environmental benefits. So,
Well, that's the buzz, getting off the gas at the moment. Mm-hmm. But you've also got other hats to wear. Now, I believe there's something called Just Another Solar Podcast. What's that all about?
Well, we started probably a month into COVID. Luke and I were talking a lot on the phone, and we were running into the same problem with customers every day, being outraged that the price of modules had gone from 36 cents a watt to 50 cents a watt, and explaining to them how the world works over and over and over again. So we said, why don't we do a podcast? And then we can just say, just go and listen to the podcast. It saves us having to repeat the same story over and over again. So that was our first...
But at the time, I mean, Friday afternoons, we were just gathering different people from the industry and friends, having a beer on Zoom because we know it was quite a tough time. And being solar nerds that we are, we'd just be discussing, talking shop. Sometimes it went beyond there, but we found it was really refreshing for ourselves and others to join in. And like Karl said, we were talking about stuff that we went, hey, this would be useful to other people, not making ourselves experts, but it's the same conversations that other people would be having on Zoom or at the pub.
Yeah, I'm being a little bit disingenuous. I listened to your show, so I knew all about it, and it's really great. And I totally agree with you, Karl. You get sick of answering the same question, and it's one of the reasons that I started my channel too, was to be able to say, well, I've made a video on that. Could you watch this, please?
Go and see the video that I did.
Yeah.
Look, we've been really lucky, and we've had some great guests, which is just awesome, the quality of guests that we've managed to get on the podcast. And some people are really quite humbling for me personally. You just go, wow, this person's achieved so much. I think to this date, my favourite guest is still Peter Leeson.
Okay.
What about you, Luke?
Oh, it's a tough question, Karl. I can't pick a favourite.
Yeah, love those tiles. Hey, look, people often talk about solar pioneers, but I think you're a couple of junior pioneers in the solar industry. You've been around a long time, been through quite a few different businesses and stuff. Tell me about your journey. Okay, starting with Karl.
My very first job in solar was for a mob called Sun Connect, doing door-to-door sales in Melbourne when a 2 kilowatt system was $10,000. I moved to Perth very shortly thereafter and worked for a company called Bright Generation, and they were trying to integrate solar, hot water and PV so that it all looked very similar on the roof. And basically we invented a really good-looking system that did hot water and PV.
In one unit?
Separate PV panels and hot water panels, but they looked physically the same. So we were using Solon 1 by 1 metre panels and a Tysun solar collector, and it all looked quite good on the roof, but it was spectacularly expensive, and they got a deal with Retrovision to sell solar through Retrovision. So there was lots of sideways movement there where they started using cheap Chinese product, which all fell over horrifically and sent them broke. Then I worked for Apollo Energy, which was part of Energy Matters. Energy Matters was another one of those online businesses that said we can do solar remotely with technologies like Nearmap and Google Earth. And I was responsible for their wholesale business in Perth. And then they got bought out by a company called Sun Edison. And I saw that one as a train wreck in slow motion. They'd bought a lot of solar farms globally that weren't making enough money to pay the interest on the money that they'd borrowed to buy them. And of course, that doesn't make any financial sense. And the investors figured that out and left in a very short space of time. Their share price went from $100 odd and a multi-billion dollar company to cents in the dollar in the space of a couple of months.
I remember 6 months before they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And Karl was on a call and said, "This is a house of cards, guys." The prophet of doom over here.
Just can't work. At the end of the day, every business needs to make money all the time. You know, there's no good forecasting. We're going to start making money in 10 years from now. But at the time, the only other Fronius distributor in Perth was SolarGain. And I went to Dom and said, right, we need to start a wholesale business because there's no other Fronius distributors in town. You guys have got a direct account. And that was the beginning of SG Wholesale. And since then, Luke's now running that business these days and very successfully.
Right. Wow. Cool. Well, I think that's a segue to Luke.
Yeah, well, I stumbled into solar. I was doing FIFO gold mining. So I'd fly in, fly out. My first daughter was born and I decided I didn't want to be an absent dad. So I took a job in Perth with Energy Matters, Apollo Energy. And I remember walking in the first day and this guy was there. And really it started a journey. Karl and I have worked together more often than not in the solar industry. But anyway, at that point, I probably was not that interested in solar. It was just a job for the first 6 months. And I just had that moment, that epiphany where I realised that this has some legs to it and then got a bit passionate towards it. So I wasn't going and doing further studies. It was just if there was a webinar, I'd be in it. If there was something to read, I'd be in it. I'd be networking, learning as much as I can. So it was a journey from stumbling into the industry to getting actually really passionate about it. So we worked together for around, I think, 5 years initially.
Easy. Yep.
Karl moved on and then I went somewhere else for a couple of years and then I ended up coming back to SolarGain. And I remember that, or coming to SolarGain where Karl was, I remember I was taking Karl out for lunch to say he had offered a job to say, sorry, mate, I'm not going ahead with it. By the end of the lunch, I was ready to sign a contract. So jumped on board and I've been there for around 7 years now. Karl was there initially, then I took over the wholesale business, so managing the national distribution business. And in tandem with that, iStore was founded out of SolarGain, so starting with the heat pumps around 8 years ago.
Yep.
And that started off just being really a business within SolarGain, and then it got traction and became the amazing brand that we know now. So it really became too big to contain within SolarGain. So it got to the point where the heat pumps were doing really well. We knew we had a great brand and brand equity, and then we were given the opportunity to go into partnership with, well, the world's largest inverter manufacturer and to get exclusivity on their products for the Australian market. So coming back to the electrification and the heart of our business, it's not just to make money. We genuinely believe in decarbonising. We want to make a difference. Yes, we want to run a successful business, but we also want to make a difference with the environment and for the people out there. So we were given the opportunity and then the vision grew and grew. If we're going to be an electrification business, we're going to have solar inverters, solar batteries. We've got the heat pumps already. We're currently doing development on EV chargers and integrating them onto the one platform. So my journey evolved that way, and now it's definitely within iStore and building the brand, yes, but building the solution and the vision as well. Yep.
Cool. I've actually got an iStore hot water heater that you guys supplied, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It's just going well. Heats the water every day, works perfectly well. Yeah, really impressed. And so going from hot water to other areas of energy efficiency and energy generation is a big change. So how did that growth happen?
The growth happened because we actually have relationships with hundreds and hundreds of plumbers across Australia, and we've also got relationships with hundreds and hundreds of electricians across Australia. So we've managed to bring those two people together. Ultimately, our previous model of heat pump needed to be hardwired, and it takes just the same amount of time to run a circuit for a hot water service as it does to connect water to a hot water service. So it was fair game for both trades. Our newer models now plug in on a 10 amp plug. We've reduced the size of the backup or the booster element so that we can get it under 10 amps. So we don't really need the Sparky in a lot of applications.
So you don't need a dedicated circuit anymore?
Don't need a dedicated circuit. That makes it easier for the plumbers. It makes it less expensive for solar businesses and electricians to sell it. And at the end of the day, on a retail sales perspective, it's always the retailer that makes the best margin. So ultimately we encourage plumbers to sell them themselves, electricians to sell them. We're all in the renewable energy business together, and ultimately whoever makes that sale is the one that makes the best margin. So we encourage everybody to have a crack at making that sale. And Victoria's got 2 million gas hot water services to get off gas. Australia, we've got 5 million in total, so the rest of the country's got another 3 million gas hot water heaters. And making hot water in Australia takes 75 million kilograms of CO2 every day.
Gee.
And so there's a huge opportunity to lower our emissions. It's worth sort of 25% of our domestic energy emissions, heating water. And if you roll the clock back to our grandparents, it didn't exist. You had to light a fire under a steel bath in the paddock. Hot water's an amazing luxury that we take for granted in our generation. And the downside is that it uses a lot of power.
We've still got the steel bath technology here too, but more for aesthetic reasons. Under a full moon with a fire, in a bath with a friend, it's great.
Glass of red.
Yeah.
Or green tea for you? I think it's green tea.
And ready supply of cold water because it just gets hotter.
Yeah, right. Of course it does.
Actually, I have a technical question. So you mentioned that you've reduced the peak demand so that you can use a 10 amp circuit.
Yeah.
Does your heat pump come with a plug on the end?
Yes.
It does. So I'm just thinking market opportunities here. All those instantaneous gas units around the place need a power point. There's a power point, 10 amp. You won't even need an electrician.
Yeah, so even better, the actual heat pump itself runs at about 850 watts of input power, so it's at 4 amps or thereabouts. So even if that circuit's hanging off the back of the kitchen, which is typical, where you've got the most heavily loaded circuit in the house, the likelihood of you tripping that circuit, even if you're boiling the kettle or running your air fryer for 10 minutes or whatever, is pretty low. So I think that's fantastic.
I think there's a lot of rewiring going on with induction cooktops, though. So kitchens are becoming the new mega power centre when you've got like a 4.5 kilowatt induction cooker.
Yeah, my electrician actually got that severely wrong with our new build. I've got 16 mil 4-core and earth running to my induction cooktop so I can launch a satellite from my cooktop. Excuse me. Totally unnecessary. Of course, 32 amps is fine. I think what a lot of electricians don't realise is that the breaking tripping curve of a circuit breaker, it'll run at 180% of its rated load for 500 seconds. That's 9 minutes. If anyone who's used an induction cooktop, if you turn on all of those burners flat out, you don't have enough arms to stir things fast enough. You have to back it off.
Yeah.
So it's just no way that you're going to run out of capacity. And the other thing is, typically it only takes 6 minutes to cook a steak. Everything else that you're cooking's at a much lower level of power. So I look at my energy monitoring platform universe with iStore, and cooking dinner uses very little next to the big loads in the house. These days the big load's heating it. That's a massive load for the house with 5 air conditioners running and charging 2 electric cars. That's another massive load. And then, of course, our massive generation sources, the right size solar system is the one that fits on the roof. And you've taken that to a whole new level here, Glenn. You've got them out in the paddock as well.
We've got big roofs, paddocks. Hey, when we were talking off camera, I was asking about the iStore products, and you said actually it's a platform. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, so it's a single platform. Everyone's familiar with monitoring platforms and control platforms. So it's about broadening that beyond just solar and batteries, EV chargers, heat pumps. So having it on one single platform. Interestingly, what we didn't just buy this off the shelf. We're actively developing this with our software partner. We have a tech team which Jack Longy is part of and is the leader of. So they're working. And the beauty of this is that I'm used to dealing with manufacturers where you find a glitch, you find an improvement, you send it to the local rep, they go through a few layers of management before R&D will look at it from the manufacturer, then it goes in the queue and you have to wait. For us, we have the direct line to our software developers. So if there's a glitch, if we want to change something in the appearance, we want to add products, we can call them, we can email them, we can make it happen really quick. So the platform starts with all of the devices, but then in the roadmap, it's also its interaction with the grid and the network. So a lot of the development, though, has been around meeting compliance in Australia. So we've got the CCPOS, we've got the WA shutdown requirements, the flexible exports for South Australia. I think that's all good stuff.
Wow.
It'd be a whole lot easier if it was just uniform around the country and you don't have to do this lot of development and testing, demonstration, and that lot, and that lot, and that state, and that network. So
cool. I've got a couple of follow-up questions on that. So the fact that it's a software platform, does it mean you can have interaction between different devices in some useful way?
Potentially, yes. But had an interesting conversation with Nigel Morris, who's also on the podcast with us about this, macro controls versus micro controls. So you don't want to end up being a big, getting right down to the small Internet of Things devices. We're talking about the main loads, the main generation and interaction with the grid. So ultimately, things like VPP and operating in wholesale pricing markets and that sort of thing, that's all in the roadmap. That's important. But controlling your small device, pick one off the shelf here, I don't think that's as critical. Things like hot water, generation, storage, and major loads, EVs.
Well, as an example, we integrate with Village, and the Village controller can turn on and off air conditioners in your house based on how much energy you've got. So if I've got spare energy, I'll use it to heat the house in winter, I'll use it to cool the house in winter, rather than hitting an export limit and wasting the energy. I can tell it to turn things on. If I'm at the export limit, turn on the water heater, turn on the air conditioner. And ultimately, I'm a terrible case for batteries. I'm currently using my house as a battery. All of my spare energy goes into heating it.
It's a thermal battery.
Yeah,
right.
Thermal battery. I use my air conditioners. They're 300 to 400% efficient. I thump heat into that house when I'm generating power from my solar system. I think people forget that the average Victorian house uses 50,000 megajoules of gas over over the year. Out of that 50,000 megajoules, 42,000 happens in winter, and 65% of their hot water demand happens in winter because the cold water is 10 degrees instead of 20 degrees that it is in summer. So if I math all of that backwards, I get about 70 kilowatt hours a day worth of energy going into their house down a pipe. And the average electricity consumption in Victoria is only 11 kilowatt hours a day. So, as a solar industry, we've only captured 20% of their energy demand. It's like, we've been doing this wrong. We really need to get into heat pumps. And of course, Saul Griffith wrote a book about it. That was my inspiration for buying an electric car. If your cost of buying fuel from someone else is more than what it would cost in interest to buy something that's electric, then you should go and buy something electric. So great book that we recommend. We talk to Saul quite regularly as well.
Yeah, cool. I really like your analysis there of energy. So, wow, that's pretty impressive. 10 kilowatt hours of electrical energy, 70 kilowatt hours of thermal energy via gas, predominantly in Victoria, going into an average home.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, Saul Griffith said that the average Australian energy consumption could be brought down from 100 kilowatt hours down to 30. And we're on a houseboat over a couple of scotches. I think your numbers for Victoria are a bit out. And he says, yeah, you guys down in Victoria burn heaps and heaps of gas through winter. And it's because it's cold down here. There's no getting past it. It's not a more benign climate like Sydney or Perth. Perth's only got 2 weeks of cold weather a year. It's only 2 weeks.
Yeah.
They've got 3 months where they're getting fried, but that's a different problem. It's an easier problem to solve with solar because obviously summertime you're generating tons of power. It's easy.
Yeah, cool. Hey, I did have a second part to that question. I was trying to remember what it was. So you were talking about the software platform. It'll come back to me anyway. I guess you've already mentioned it. So electrify everything is kind of in your DNA at iStore, and do it in a renewable, focused, energy smart way. But you're also looking at the economics as well. So taking advantages of things like VPP. That's what I was going to ask. Okay, so when people throw an acronym at me on this channel, I like to expand those acronyms because not everyone knows all the TLAs, 3-letter acronyms. So let's go through them. What's VPP?
Virtual power plant.
And what does that mean?
So it's having an aggregation of storage across a grid, and as the grid requires it, they can either draw power from those batteries en masse, or they can suck the energy up in the event that there's a glut.
So effectively, it's a big battery, but it's dispersed across small homes and businesses.
That's correct.
Right. Yep. And how can it be made a big battery? What is that VPP function?
So it aggregates them all together, it controls them all together in symphony with one another. So instead of having one battery that's a megawatt hour, you've got a number of behind-the-meter batteries that will be the same amount, and they get called on and have the same effect. So they can, without jumping into too many other things, so one of them is the energy itself. The other thing, as you know, is the quality of it. So the voltage, the frequency, which it's critical to be kept stable. And batteries are really good with that. We've seen that with big batteries, but if you get a critical mass of batteries behind the meter that can be controlled in symphony, and that's the name that they used in WA for a pilot program, a VPP one, Symphony, if they can all work together, then you're going to have the same impact.
Cool. Can you just move in a little bit, just a little bit off mic? So who does that control though? Who determines when to pull the lever and import or export energy from all those aggregated systems?
Well, ultimately, I think it's the DNSPs. So the network providers will say that we want to do this, and then it's a software solution. So you have third-party providers such as Evergen, such as GreenSync, those sort of companies that control it.
Gotcha. Karl's looking at me like I'm an idiot. I'm asking a few Dorothy Dixes. Sorry.
No, not at all. Not at all. I've just got this idea in my head. Amber.
Go for it.
Amber. So at the moment, I think VPP is in its infancy, and quite a lot of the time the VPP programs that are out there aren't paying people enough money for their stored energy. So if my cost of battery divided by the number of megawatt hours of warranted capacity, I typically see somewhere around 40 cents a kilowatt hour for every kilowatt hour you put through a battery. So if the VPP is paying me 30 cents and I could have got, say, 3 cents for my export and it cost me 40 cents to put it through the battery, it owes me 43 cents. So one thing iStore won't do is help people lose money slowly through poor VPP programs.
I like that. Help people lose money slowly.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, ultimately, there are opportunities. In the last couple of weeks, we've had a couple of generators out, and there's been prices of $40, $50 a kilowatt hour on the grid. I'm guessing that your gentailers that have long-term contracts for supply aren't exposed to that, but retailers that offer wholesale pricing like Amber absolutely are. And I read through quite a few threads on Facebook about the Amber user group, and people saying how outrageous it was that they could spend $50 in power to cook their dinner for that night. And one great comment says, whilst they're emptying your pockets, they're filling mine. I thought that's fantastic. So if I've got the storage, I can be the master of my own destiny and avoid that.
So that was an end user of Amber in terms of electricity purchase, and as opposed to someone who was actually selling their energy to Amber.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if I see in the future people being able to select the buy and sell rates themselves, and that being automated in the background, I don't think that we're at a point right now where it's working as well as it could in the future. Obviously, there's lots of talk about vehicle to grid with people's car batteries. Obviously, there's a lot more capacity, and we've talked to various inverter manufacturers, including iStore, about how we implement that going forward, and that's an exciting new space that should really come to fruition over the next 5 years. It'll be great to see that develop.
Cool.
I think self-sufficiency is also a good thing. So we're talking about trading, with Amber or with the wholesale market pricing. We're talking about VPPs in order to get paid. I think it's also really good to look at just being self-sufficient. I personally, at my last house, I had solar and battery and ran over 94% self-sufficiency across the year.
Oh, so self-sufficiency in terms of you generate enough to cover your usage.
Correct.
Not as in you can turn off the grid and don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, like you can here. It's a pretty amazing place to visit, Glenn. Everywhere we look, there's an amazing amount of technology and batteries and so on. It must be like a kid in an electronics paradise that you've got going on here.
Yeah, there's a bit of a playground. Yep. I'll give you a tour afterwards. The other acronym was CSIP-AU. That's a lot of letters.
So Common Smart Inverter Protocol. And once again, it's coming down to the control of the inverters. So where DNSPs, network providers, will be able to ramp up and ramp down inverters. What we're seeing around the country at the moment is very crude operation, remote shutdown in WA, where they say, right, we've got an event here where there's too much solar, too much generation going in. We're going to shut down all of those inverters, just like that. Very similar in Queensland with the GSD device, where network operator says we want to curtail solar, and they just flick them off and flick them on. With the Common Smart Inverter Protocol, it gives them the ability to ramp up and to ramp down and to have a single point of control for these systems. So really, we don't need crude devices. We don't need to do a massive turn off, turn on, turn off, turn on. It can just move with the requirements of the grid.
So there's also been limits put on inverter capacity to connect to the grid. In some areas it's quite small, like 5 kilowatts maximum. But having that CSIP functionality means that you could actually have more generation, but it can be controlled. So it's a good thing for customers.
That's right. So we're going to see larger systems allowed around the country because the networks know, they've curtailed the size of solar inverters to protect the network, and so they can manage it based on what the technology was there. Now we have the technology to manage it. You can put bigger solar in. When it needs to be curtailed, it can be done in a smart way as opposed to a crude way of just turning things off and on.
That's another great feature of the iStore. So I think we're an industry leader at 250% oversizing with a battery. So ultimately, my own experience going back.
Hang on, you better explain what that means. Do you mean your battery's 250% bigger than everyone else's?
No, I mean that the solar array that's connected to the inverter is 250% of the inverter rating. So it can put 12.5 kilowatts of panels on a 5 kilowatt inverter.
But how can that be? It's a 5 kilowatt inverter.
Yeah, so good. You should ask. So it can charge the battery at 5 kilowatts. And it can make 5 kilowatts of AC simultaneously. And we all know that solar panels run at about 80% of their capacity. So even if we've got it split over a couple of orientations, the losses become negligible. So I pioneered this stuff 10 years ago. 11 kilowatts seemed to work out about the most I could fit on my roof. And in WA, you were only allowed a 5 kilowatt inverter. Summertime, that would translate to 55 kilowatt hours a day. Wintertime, it would translate to about 35 kilowatt hours a day. And the only difference was the number of sun hours that you had between the two seasons. But I saw that present to the grid as a solid 5 kilowatts of output, almost regardless of the weather, all the time. And I think that that's a good thing for the network rather than solar output jumping up and down at significant rates with different types of weather. You could stabilise the amount of generation over a period of time. And I think that's something that we need to lobby the CEC for, to get rid of the even the 133% oversizing on an inverter that doesn't have batteries.
News, they're no longer the accreditation body.
Right.
Solar Accreditation Australia took over back in May, and one of the first things they did was get rid of the 133% limit on AC coupled systems with storage. So you could now have both DC coupled and AC coupled storage systems up to the manufacturer's recommendation.
Yeah, so there's no real reason then to have the storage there at all because the same thing's happening.
Yeah, though that's probably another step.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
Yeah. I mean, I've got no inside knowledge, but effectively, the accreditation body, SAA, has to deal with the Clean Energy Regulator, who's the federal government body in charge of managing the small-scale technology certificates and small-scale technology scheme. And so they have to approve it as well.
Yeah, well, those certificates were based on north-facing array in the various solar zones or regions, and ultimately, originally it was an eligible roof had to have 10 square metres of north-facing roof for a solar system. These days, the right roof is roof. Any roof is good roof, and in an overcast sky, it doesn't make any difference which way the panels face, even though we know that the annual generation from a south-facing system in Melbourne is 30% lower than a north-facing one. It's still good because on those overcast days, you still need energy to heat your house. Yeah. So it's still good roof.
I'm totally with you. I call south the new north because it's there. and if you live in Queensland, your south-facing roof's better than north-facing in Melbourne.
Yeah, and indeed, so people quite often, I look at people's power bills and they say, I don't need an array that's this size. And I say, okay, at the moment, only 20% of your energy is coming down the wire. The other 80% of the energy is coming into your house via a pipe. So if we want to change it around so all of your energy is coming from that wire, then we need to account for your electric car. We need to account for your hot water. We need to account for your space heating. And these are all huge energy users. So the right size solar system is absolutely one that fills your roof.
All right, I'll throw something in the mix. So I was talking to my plumber the other day and I said, because he was actually removing a gas unit to replace it with a heat pump. And I said, because you're losing out on the gas installations now. And he goes, but hydrogen's coming. Why are you laughing?
I'm ready to go. So I've got the solar array on the roof. Yep. I generate an extra 2 megawatts a month for 6 months of the year. So I've got 12 megawatt hours of electricity. All I need now is the hydrogen electrolyzer. And
you could put it in the backyard next to your small modular reactor.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Same size.
That's a great idea. No, so the problem that I see there is it's not really practical to put an electrolyzer in your backyard and compress hydrogen, cool it down to minus 250 degrees to liquefy it to then put it in your car. This is all pretty crazy stuff. Hydrogen's a very small atom, so it escapes from places that other gases don't escape from. So I think it'd be quite wasteful.
Yeah, I think the flux generator's got more legs. Yeah.
Flux capacitor.
Sorry, flux capacitor. That's right. It's been a while since I watched that movie. Yeah. So I agree with you. I think hydrogen's got some massive challenges, but maybe on an industrial scale we actually generate and use on site might be practical.
Well, I'm surprised that you don't have a Mirai parked out the front. If anyone I expected to have a hydrogen car, it was you.
Okay. Coming soon, a Mirai hydrogen car, nudge, nudge.
Well, then you've got to figure out how to make the hydrogen. We've got enough solar here, right?
We have way too much. We generally sort of fall at this, on a sunny day by 10 o'clock in the morning. So the rest of the day, it's just been curtailed.
Yeah.
So we're looking
Except for today when you've got my Tesla plugged in.
Yeah.
Give it a fair nudge.
It probably will. Cool. Well, I want to go a bit deeper on the heat pump thing because it's something that's sort of in my consciousness at the moment because I'm being involved with a couple of installations and the technology is really quite fascinating. So first up, tell us a bit about what's different about the iStore heat pump.
Our main point of difference in the market is that we have more heating power to the tank than 99% of the competitors in the market.
Why do you need that?
I think it's absolutely critical. So historically, people have complained about heat pumps having a short life and not performing particularly well in winter. The reason for that is twofold. At lower temperatures, the amount of input power that you need to the compressor declines. So if I take an iStore at, say, 7 or 8 degrees, if I feed it a kilowatt hour of energy, I'll get 4 kilowatts worth of heat to the tank. If I drop that temperature down to 0, my coefficient of performance drops to about 2.2, but my input power also decreases. So instead of being able to run the compressor at 900 watts, now my input power to the compressor is down at 700 watts. So 700 times 2.2, I'm only getting 1.5 kilowatts worth of heating power to the tank at 0 degrees, whereas at 7 degrees, I'm getting 4 kilowatts of heating power. So we've got 2 timers. We aim to run it during the day. And the coldest place in Victoria is Mount Buller, and the average daytime temperature in winter is 4.7 degrees. We're still getting COP 3.5. So we're still getting incredible performance in an alpine setting, but I'm not getting the unit running in the middle of the night or at 7 o'clock in the morning when it's 0 degrees outside, because it's just wearing itself out and not doing a lot of good.
Right, so I can see some rationale there. So, which is having that higher power rating means that when the time is right, like the air temperature's at its highest, you can heat a lot of water quickly.
Indeed. So that, funnily enough, it takes 4 hours to heat a tank with an iStore in winter in Melbourne. So stone cold tank, as in when I say stone cold, I mean the households run out of hot water. It'll never really be as cold as the first day you turn it on, because we're very sensitive to the temperature of the water. If you jump into the shower after your wife, you get scalded, yeah? She likes the temperature at 42 and you like it at 40. So by the time it drops to 38, you're done. It's freezing. We're getting out. So we're very, very sensitive beasts when it comes to the temperature of the water. And let's take summertime. I've got 270 litres of water at 60 degrees. I can mix that with another 270 litres of water at 20 degrees, the cold water temperature, and I end up with 540 litres in the middle at 40 degrees for taking showers. Most people have a 10 litre a minute shower head. So I've got 54 minutes of showering time. Happy days. Everybody's happy there. I can have 4 people in the house. Everyone can have a 10-minute shower and I've got a bit of spare. It's all good. Winter time, though, I can only mix half as much cold water because the cold water's down at 10. So now I've only got 405. I've lost 25% of my delivery capacity. I've also lost, or I need to increase the amount of energy that I put into the water by another 25%. So instead of going from 20 to 60, 40 degrees I'm putting into the water, in wintertime I've got to go from 10 to 60, so I've got to put 25% more energy into the water. So if it takes 4 hours in wintertime, that fits with my solar window, right? Yeah. They're the best solar hours in the day. Yeah. If I've got a lower powered heat pump, so for example, most of our competitors have only got 2.6 kilowatts of heating power to the tank. I'm going to take 50% longer to heat the water. So instead of taking 4 hours now, it takes 6. And I'd only have 6 hours of sun.
Right. So, yeah, like hitting that sweet spot, being able to heat the water quickly. Just as an aside, a friend of mine who sort of studied this, she said one of the best indicators for how long people shower for is the length of their hair. Would you agree, Luke?
I have super quick showers. Thanks, Glenn.
Well, I've got some experience here. I live with 3 women,
yes,
and 2 stepdaughters. And they both have quite long hair. And if they decide to wash their hair at the same day, I'm a bit like you with heat pumps as you are with solar inverters. I've got 2 heat pumps. So I've got 600 litres of hot water at 60 degrees. And if 2 kids decide that they want to wash their hair on the same night in winter, I can get through 900 litres of hot water.
Wow.
But you know what? The next day, it only takes 8 hours to heat those 2 tanks, and they're running simultaneously, so they're both running from 10 till 2. And now that our export rate in Victoria is 3 cents a kilowatt hour, I'm putting 4 kilowatts worth of energy input times 2 units, so 8 times 3, it's costing me 25 cents to get 900 litres of hot water. And for me to buy that 900 litres of water from Melbourne Water costs $5.
Geez, you do the numbers.
Well, you know what? It actually makes soil temperature helps plants grow. So in wintertime, I water my lawn with hot water now. It's so cheap.
And you fill your spa too.
That's right. That's right.
So you actually picked on one of my favourite sayings, which is a hot water tank is the battery you already own.
Yes.
Why not store energy in that and think of it as a battery? Yeah,
so it's around 16 kilowatt hours worth of heat you need in winter. It's around 14 kilowatt hours worth of heat you need in summer. Typical out-of-pocket cost for an iStore's, depending on people's rebates, somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000. maybe $4,000 in states where we don't get any rebates, or the rebates are lower. It's a very cheap battery, you know, next to a Powerwall. I think the cheapest I've seen a Powerwall is still around $14,000, and a Powerwall's only 13.5 kilowatt hours usable.
Yeah, right. Speaking of batteries, you also do batteries.
We do batteries.
Tell me about the battery product.
Okay, so it's a modular battery solution. At the moment, we have 5 kilowatt hour modules, and you can stack them up to 15 kilowatt hours. Now, interestingly, all of our residential inverters are hybrids. We don't see a place where, you know, to put in a string inverter anymore that isn't a hybrid. The exception is some of the commercial jobs. So we've got a couple of commercial-sized inverters, but right from 5 kilowatts through to 25 kilowatts shortly, we've got hybrids. So the largest single phase is a 10 kilowatt hybrid inverter with 3 MPPTs, and then we've got 3-phase 10, 15 and 25 kilowatts coming soon. So with the batteries, one of the biggest focuses is efficiency, but also safety. So there's multiple layers of safety, which I know one of the other manufacturers that you love and support as well, they have similar levels of safety in their batteries. So it's about charge, discharge, and having optimization at the battery module level, which means, number one, if you want to add new batteries to old batteries, in the older system, then you'd be pulling down the performance of the new battery proportional to where the old battery was in terms of its performance compared to day one. With these ones, you can get a battery that's at 80%, an older one, add one that's at 100%, and both batteries are going to do exactly what they're meant to do. The batteries also use a lot of smarts to manage the charge discharge and to monitor that. So if there's an anomaly in a battery, we've seen the battery recalls on TV and the ads and the radio. You know, it's a bit of overkill, but people are mindful of the safety. So it monitors the charge discharge. If there's any anomaly, it's going to pop a fault, and you've got some safety in there. As a fallback position, if it gets to 170 degrees internally in the module, then it's got a self-extinguishing pouch. So, it goes off and the module's done. But in theory, you shouldn't be in a position where you're going to get a fire, thermal runaway, that sort of thing.
Wow. Hey, you mentioned the modularity and the fact that you can mix batteries old and new. How can that be done? Like normally you have to have all the same age so they all charge and discharge at the same rate.
It's similar to DC optimizers on the roof. Mm-hmm. So you have an optimizer at each battery, and it's going to make sure that each battery is doing the output, and it manages that. Now I can't go too much more technical than that. I know what it does. I can't explain how it does it.
I'll stick my hand up.
Go.
So it's got its own DC to DC converter. So each battery module actually puts out 350 volts on its own. If we put 2 or 3 together, they'll run at 500 volts. And that's just so we can shift more power down the same cable. But in doing so, I can switch off the DC to DC converter in a module that isn't working properly, and the other 2 modules are still capable of operating normally. Where I think that's an advantage is further down the line in 10 years. So for the sake of argument, we know that it costs about $1,500 to swap out a faulty battery in any state. By the time we get an electrician there and we book it in and do all the management stuff and recommission a new battery module or whatever that takes, it's a $1,500 exercise. In the case of one particular manufacturer, they've got a service centre in South Australia, and it costs at least $500 in freight to send a battery there and to send it back. And then, of course, if it's got a 5 kilowatt bi-directional inverter in it, that's at least a $2,000 piece of hardware. So all of a sudden, I've got $4,000 to repair a battery which cost $14,000 10 years ago. I just can't see that happening. So outside of warranty, these things are for recycling or for some kind of repurposing of the cells. The economics of sending it away and getting it repaired are very tough to show good. Therefore, any means that you can put in place to make the life of the product longer are going to be advantageous to the client. And the iStore uses LFP batteries, which still fairly early days in terms of technology. They're a little bit behind the ternary type cell, but we know they're going to last at least 3 times longer. And ultimately that gives us a service life that's a lot longer than 10 years.
Yeah, cool. So that is a big issue. People often want to upgrade a system after they've bought it. So is it possible with your product that you've bought, say, 2 modules, but actually it turns out you needed 3? You can add a third one a year later?
You can do that at year 8.
Year 8, right, okay.
You can do it through the whole life of the battery, and that's one of the real benefits.
And equally, if one of them did have a fault, the system still works. You said it isolates.
It isolates that one. And the other way that it does it, you've got 16 cells per module, and it's got 8 sensors in there. So in real time, it's taking temperature readings as well. So yes, you can mix and match. If you have a service issue, if you want to upgrade down the track, you can do it. And we also have a larger battery coming next year, which is 7 kilowatt hours. So currently with the residential ones, you can only put 2 stacks in parallel. So you end up with 30 kilowatt hours. But with the 7 kilowatt hour modules that are coming, so a stack of 21 kilowatt hours, you'll be able to put 3 of those stacks up to 63 kilowatt hours. So paired with a 25 kilowatt hybrid, we think it's a really good solution because we know that system sizes are growing. Somewhere says the average system size is around, 10 kilowatts?
Yep.
And that opens up the larger residential, but also the SMEs, so the smaller businesses that have been talking to us about batteries as well. It just opens it up because it's quite economical as well for them to do it.
So I guess Karl will be testing that 3-stack system at his place.
Hope so. Look, ultimately, I came up with a rule of thumb. Actually, I didn't. I won't take credit for it. Enphase came up with a rule of thumb when the original 1.2 kilowatt hour AC module came out. And we said, what's the right size? What should we put with each module? And they said 1-to-1's a good number. If you've got 1 kilowatt of panels, 1 kilowatt hour of storage is a good number. So a 5 kilowatt iStore hybrid, 5 kilowatt inverter, I can put 10 kilowatts worth of panels on it, and I can put a 10 kilowatt hour battery. If someone then wants backup and they want some kind of buffer beyond that array capacity that sits there doing nothing, lots of people do that, add another module, another 5 kilowatts that you don't use on a day-to-day basis. That's feasible. But ultimately, particularly in Victoria, it's really important to be able to put enough panel next to your battery. And that's one thing I think that the industry has gotten wrong in the past, coupling a 13.5 kilowatt hour battery with a 6.6 kilowatt hour solar system. The time when we use our batteries the most is winter. When we need that capacity, we don't have the generation capacity to put it in. And then summertime, because we've got more hours in the day when we can use our solar system, we underutilise the battery in summer. So it's really wise to put in a bigger array than your battery is.
Yeah, I agree. One of my favourite mottos is the answer is always more solar panels.
Yeah, and actually there's been lots of studies done on a grid scale.
Yep.
We need less storage in the grid with more renewable capacity. So we know that we need 5 times as much capacity as what the grid needs to cover those periods of low generation. And it's still cheaper to build 6 megawatt wind turbines than it is to build 6 megawatt hour batteries. And obviously a battery doesn't generate any energy at all, it just stores it. So we need to keep building those assets. We still only got, 35% penetration in Australia on domestic rooftops.
Only.
We've still got a massive job to go.
Got 6 million roofs to go, right.
Yeah, so we're also coming up on a period now where in just a couple of months in Victoria, the people that originally got on the premium feed-in tariff, that 60 cents runs out at the end of October or the 1st of November. That's hundreds of thousands of systems that are 1.5 kilowatts.
That's going to hurt.
And ultimately, 1.5 kilowatts is useless in the modern age, and it has driven those people into energy poverty. They haven't wanted to use their energy during the day because they want to get 60 cents for it. Of course, all through winter, they haven't made any money and they've been cold. All we need to do is rip those systems out, put 27 kilowatts of panels on the roof. It probably cost the same amount of money as it did to put the 1.5 back on 10 years ago as well.
Yeah, cool. Hey, it's been great talking to you guys, and I know we're going to finish up on just talking a bit about iStore as a company. Now, is it an Australian company?
Absolutely.
Yep.
100% Australian owned and operated. So it was founded here, and it's all about trying to bring more of the value chain into Australia, because we don't have all of the advanced manufacturing here. So we're not doing all the PCBs and a lot of other stuff. But what we do have is people. So we've built a tech support team. We've built a development team. We've got our local service team. And that's one thing that we pride ourselves on. And we feel that we know we've got the right product mix, but it's about doing what we do best, which is service, which is smarts. So we're definitely Aussie. As Aussie as Ray Gun, if you like.
It's funny.
I'm going to get you to do some breaking
that? I think
in a
every
minute.
time I've opened up socials, it's just Ray Gun, breakdancing. And I think that's what everyone associates Australia with these days. But yeah, so we're proudly Australian. We're headquartered in WA. We're a national business. You're about to breakdance, Karl.
Oh, look, at the end of the day, I've worked on and off for iStore for 7 years now. That's a long time. And the reason why I'm there now is because they've always done the right thing. The two owners of the business, they're very much family orientated. And I haven't done a specific head count as to how many people are related or their other family members are employed in the business, but it really is a family-owned and operated business, and I'm really proud to be a part of it.
And the people involved are known to the industry. So myself and Karl, of course, but Jack Longy Long and a bunch of the other people, Dom, as you said, Dom McCurry, Wayne Petridis, Kira Single. A lot of these people are, well known in the industry. You've seen us at the Solar Cutters events. You've done business with us. Our reputations are known, and that's one thing we rest on, that you can have the next big shiny thing come along, but you don't know where they're going to be in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. We've seen some of the pinnacle businesses and those who are set to never pull out of the market. Q-Cells, good example, owned by Hanwha. They're too big. They're never going to pull out. They're going to keep doing this. Now, they're still servicing their warranties, but they're not operating here. Whereas we're fully staked in this. We don't have somewhere else we can go, other markets. We are Australian. If people are upset, they can lob up to our offices and tell us so. You can see us, you can touch us, you can tell us off. So we pride ourselves on that as being a genuine Australian company.
That's cool. Hey, I think, I don't know if you've seen the picture, but I think I was the pin-up boy for iStore for a little while. Because
I think you still are.
My son took a picture of me giving the tank a hug, and it seemed to be turning up in magazines and at conferences everywhere. It was hilarious.
All of our offices, you just plastered across the walls that picture of you hugging the iStore.
Yeah, that was quite a moment. Anyway, it's been great chatting to you guys. Is there anything else you want to say before we close off?
I just wanted to add in terms of the business itself, because we've had hot water and PV for so long, they really have been complementary businesses for each other that other businesses haven't had. So in wintertime, haven't been able to get an electrician on the roof because they've been rained off or it's been icy or whatever. Those times of the year, we're flat out with hot water. So hot water is traditionally, they break down in winter because the hot water has to do 65% of its work in winter. So there's always been that complementary business that's always been there with iStore. And ultimately that means that the business hasn't bled cash over the winter period. And similarly, from the plumbing side of things, it hasn't bled cash over summer when there's no work on. So they've been able to integrate those people into both parts of the business. So it remains competitive throughout the year. So anyone who's done their own home finances knows full well that, if you lose $10,000 one month, you have to put it back the next month. It's better to be zero and not lose that, over the period of time. You're far better off.
Cool.
And we're just asking people to come on the journey with us. Support the local guy, support us. No, it's good. We've got the solutions together. The vision has come together. It's not something that we just snapped open and made it happen. It's been a lot of work over time. The roadmap's really exciting. And as this thing grows, we're asking people to come on the journey with us because we all get the benefits of that. And the other thing, Glenn, thank you for your service to the industry. all of the informative stuff you do, the entertaining stuff you do, and congrats on your 100,000 followers on YouTube.
Thanks very much. Well, I reckon we better go and check to see if Karl's car's drained my house system.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we will hope it's not on fire.
Better set the fire under the bath. Set the fire under the bath.
All right. Thanks very much, guys.
Awesome. Thanks.
See ya.